had searched for 5 days, then had given up in disgust and were returning to the village when their attention was called to what seemed to be the form of a man outlined against the sky on a ridge about 1 mile distant. Before they could bring their field glasses to bear upon him, he had so far disappeared that they were able to obtain only a glimpse. This glimpse gave them the impression of an ape-like form covered with hair. They hurried to the place but did not find any further evidence. Although they spent the remainder of that day searching the surrounding country, they could find no further evidence and gave up the search. After hearing my report, my associates wanted to return to the temple, but Emal said we would visit a similar one within the next few days, and they decided to forego the second trip. Quite a number of the people from the surrounding country had congregated at the village for healing, as couriers had gone out with the tidings of the rescue of the 4 men who had been captured by the snowmen. We stopped over the next day and attended the assembly and saw some remarkable cures. One young woman, about 20 years of age, who had had her feet frozen the previous winter, had them restored. We could actually see the flesh grow until they were normal, and she walked with perfect ease. 2 blind people had their sight restored. One of them, we were told, was born blind. There were a number of minor cases healed. All seemed profoundly impressed by the work. After the assembly, we asked Emal whether there were many converts. He said a great many were really helped, and in that way their interest was aroused. They would, for a time, become workers, but the greater part of them soon fell back into their old ways of living, as they found it would be too much exertion to take up the work in earnest. The people nearly all live an easy, carefree life, and there seems to be about 1% of those that profess to believe that are really in earnest. The rest depend entirely upon others to help them when they get into trouble. Right here is where a great deal of their trouble lies. The masters say they can assist everyone that really desires help, but they cannot actually do the work for anyone. They can tell others of the abundance in store for them, but to be actually one with and of the abundance, each individual must accept and prove it for himself by actually knowing and doing the works. Chapter 20. We left the village the next morning, and 2 of the villagers who seemed to have taken up the work accompanied us. The evening of the 3rd day we came to a village about 12 miles from the one where I had been, and had looked over the records regarding John the Baptist. I was very anxious to have my associates look over these records, so we decided to stay over, and Jas accompanied us to the village. After going over the records, my associates were deeply impressed, and we laid out a plan to map and follow out the travels as outlined in the records. That evening, the master, who was with the 4th party, spent the night with us. He also brought messages from the 1st and 3rd parties. He had been born and raised in the village. His forefathers had written the records, and they had been in the family from that time on. It was claimed that he was the 5th generation removed from the writer, and that not one of the family had experienced death. They had all taken their bodies with them and could return at any time. We asked if it would be too much trouble for the writer of the records to come and talk with us. He said that it would not, and we arranged for the interview that evening. We had been seated but a few moments when a man whom we judged to be about 35 appeared suddenly in the room. He was introduced to us, and all shook hands with him. We were all spellbound at his appearance, for we had imagined that he would be very old. He was above the medium height, with rugged features, but the kindliest face I had ever looked upon. There was strength of character back of every more. His whole being emanated a light that was beyond our power of comprehension. Before we were seated, Emal, Jas, and the 2 strangers clasped hands in the center of the room and stood in perfect silence for a few moments. Then all were seated, and the one who had appeared in the room so suddenly began by saying, "You have asked for this interview in order to get a better understanding of the documents that have been read and interpreted for you. I will say that these records were made and kept by me, and those referring to that great soul John the Baptist, which seemed to surprise you so greatly, are actual occurrences of the time he was with us here. These records show that he was a man of wide knowledge and a wonderful intellect. He perceived that our teaching was true, but he apparently never came to the actual realization, for had he done so, he would never have seen death. I have sat in this room and heard John and my father converse, and it was here that he received much of his teachings. It was here that Father passed on and took his body with him, and John beheld his passing. There are none of my family on father or mother's side that have not taken their bodies with them in passing. This passing means the perfecting of the body spiritually until one becomes so conscious of the deep spiritual meaning of life or God that one sees life as God sees it. Then one is privileged to receive the highest teachings, and from this realm one is able to help all. We never descend from this realm, for those who have reached this place never wish to descend. They know that life is all progress, a going forward. There is no turning back, and none wish to do so. All are reaching out to help those that are striving for more light, and the messages that we are continually sending out into the universal are being interpreted by God's children who are receptive in every part of the earth today. This is the prime object of reaching this realm or state of consciousness, for we are able to help all in some way. We can and do talk with and instruct those who are receptive, who raise their consciousness either through their own efforts or the assistance of another. Another cannot do the work for you, nor can another carry you along indefinitely. You must desire to do the work for yourself, then do it. Then you are free and self-reliant. When all comes into the consciousness, as Jesus did, that the body is a spiritual body and indestructible, and hold themselves in this consciousness, then we shall be able to communicate with all and give out the teaching we have received to a greater number. We are privileged to know that all can accomplish all that we have accomplished, and thereby solve every problem of life, and that which has been looked upon as difficult and mysterious will be found simple. I do not seem any different to you from any other man that you meet every day, neither do I see any difference in you. We said we thought we could see something far finer in him. He answered, that is only the mortal as compared with the immortal of man. If you would only look for the God quality and not make any comparison, you would see every human being as you see me, or by looking for the Christ in every face, you would bring forth that Christ or God quality in all.